This is why it's so dangerous to let things get this bad, for real. This is exactly why it's so bad to let your currency be destroyed, let everything. This is the why you don't want to let something like this happen, why you don't want to flood your country with a bunch of people who don't really know what's going on. They may not understand the economic ramifications of what they're actually doing. This is why you don't do stuff like this. So to your question about like, well, how do we deal, well, I mean, as far as like, if your debt is denominated in dollars, right, then most debt will end up going away by default, because if the dollar currency goes away, then any debt owed in that, there's really no way to pay it. Or the government, if they're smart, which they're not, but if they were smart, how I would probably handle it would be just to print quintillions of dollars, and just mail everybody giant FedEx boxes full of $100 bills or $1 million bills or something, and say, look, just go pay all this shit off and be done with it, and give the bankers, what they want, which is just a sea of endless, worthless paper. So just give it back to them. And this is not unprecedented, by the way. I mean, in the 30s, this kind of thing happened as well. And what would happen is that you were supposed to like settle all these debts because once they took all the gold away, they made it illegal to own gold. It made it impossible to pay a debt. So then you had this offset balance thing. I'm not going to go into that in this video because, number one, because I'm not the best guy to go through that. There are guys that are way more up to speed on what happened in 33 and 34 than I am. I know enough to kind of explain it, but not in a short window like this. But also, it's sort of like trying to explain, like, this is why we don't want to have something like this happen in the very first place, is let things go this bad. Think of this as life teaching a major lesson to a lot of people, that if the currency collapses, which it's very possible. I noticed that this one video I did, where I was sitting down and I just kind of answered this question that somebody brought up, and it got all this traction of people like wanting to talk about it. It's like, well, yeah, I mean, of course it's a concerning topic. And it's a concerning topic because it could very well happen. It's a very real possibility, and it's going to happen for economic reasons, because you can't continue to do what is being done. Like, this is mathematically not sustainable. It's just debt upon debt upon debt upon debt, and there's no way to pay it. And all it's doing is it's crushing the next 3 and 4 generations of people. And there's no way for any of that to pay back. Now, as far as I'm concerned, those three Gen X, Millennials, and Zoomers don't owe any of this, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, the bankers can go fuck themselves. No, and that means that sadly, Gen X, Millennials, and Zoomers will probably end up having to like forcibly take the land back from the hedge funds, the bankers, the foreign interests, the foreign governments, and actually like physically taken back from them and boot them out of the country, again, physically. It's probably what it's going to end up taking, because what they're doing is they're trying to use this all as collateral. So you're correct to be worried about all of this, and it is a legitimate problem, though consider that any debt denominated in dollars will probably end up going away, and they're going to want to try and get you indebted to some other nonsense currency that they're conjure out of nothing. Oh, look, here we have this blue dollar bill. It's even better. Yeah. It's not. It's a matter of, again, it's just a matter of understanding this stuff. All of this comes down to education. All the stuff that I talk about here just comes down to education, just understanding this stuff. Because just understanding this stuff, you are leaps and bounds ahead of almost everybody out there if they don't understand and think about this stuff, because this is stuff that really should be thought about, in my opinion. This is like civilization ending stuff, right? There's 5 things that we look at when we look at a civilization. At least to my knowledge, I'm the only one who teaches this. I don't think there's any institution anywhere that teaches this, but I explain it. Number 1 is your currency. You look at the type of currency, and if it can be counterfeited, it's not worth doing. Number 2 is your birth rates. Number 3 is your small business ownership. Number 4 is your land and ownership by individual people. How many individual people own land in their own country, because that gives them a stake in the country. It doesn't necessarily have to be expensive. It just has to be something that they own, and they own a piece of it. And then the fifth is taxes. And those 5 things right there, if you understand those things, that you can use that as a tremendous leverage against an enemy. I mean, you could topple an entire country, by an entire civilization, by knowing how to manipulate those things. And number 1 is with the currency. That's always chief among them. So, as far as if inflation goes sky high, well, inflation is probably going to go sky high. Wouldn't surprise me. Right along with your taxes, the insurance, and everything. And keep in mind, taxes, insurance, and inflation, and interest rates are all controlled by the same people. It's the exact same people that control those 4 things. And it always has been. It's always the same people. And they do it through the manipulation of the currency. As soon as people understand the currency that we're using is insanely toxic, then maybe we have a chance at undoing that. I hope that somewhat makes you feel a little bit better anyway.